Back to burn with another Tuesday night live stream. This episode of the Blurting While Dead live stream is brought to you by the future community called the League of Extraordinary Aunts and Unks. That's the community I'm going to be building, and I think that's probably the signifier we're going to be utilizing for the audience here, y'all. So, welcome to the League, ladies and gentlemen. League of Extraordinary Aunties and Uncles. I'm going to be explaining a little bit about what my vision of the community is coming up and why it's going to be a paid community or whatnot, just so that I can have a little bit more control over the community. If you pop in, tap in, send me a shout, say what's up. If you got any questions or comments, I'll try to post them on the stream. And here we go. So before I came on, I happened to cross, I don't know where the hell this came from. I think it had to be on Threads. And for those that don't know, I think is it Mike Seaver? Which one was Kirk Cameron? He's batshit crazy. Like, he's nuts. He's like, he's a Christian nationalist kind of dude. His grift is, oh, my glasses are breaking. His grift is right-wing, hardline Christian, Christo-fascist movie filmmaking. He had that Saving Christmas, which probably should be a drinking game. Like, it should be a drinking game. I don't know exactly the rules of it, but it should possibly be a drinking game. Let me turn my light on. I'm a little bit dim here. There we go. I've been recording all day. Anyway, but he made a good point because he's talking about the executive overreach that's occurring right now. And basically he did it in the way that I would expect a Christian nationalist to phrase it, but parse it. But basically he's kind of warning his right-wing audience that there's a real danger in what's happening in the executive branch right now, because we're actually seeing legitimate, real overreach. And his contention is, what happens when when a different president gets in, like when it's not somebody who's on our side, more or less is what he's saying. What happens when it's somebody who's not on our side? What does it look like? What does life look like when, it's a different president who isn't politically aligned with Kirk and his legion of right-wing goons isn't in office? That's the point he's bringing up, and it's a valid point. I would say that the overreach is still egregious, regardless of what party is doing it. I think one of the things that's really interesting when we talk about politics in this country is people assume that we really run into this both sidesism kind of thing, right? But here's the thing I will say. Regardless of what party is doing it, I got an issue with it if I think it's foolish, and I think it violates our rights and steps on our rights. And so I was, when Biden was in there and he was doing things that I was considering egregious, like genocide and other stuff, I was kind of on his neck too. It's not, I'm agnostic when it comes to that kind of stuff. People don't think I am, but I am. But I'm not also, and I think a lot of it comes from the fact that I don't really hold back in my opinions of things. And sometimes when I'm dealing with somebody who's on the other side of the political spectrum, it sounds harsh, but I'm just as harsh on both sides of things. So, but anyway, so the word, the meme exists. The meme is actually live. Kirk Cameron just did the meme on Threads where he said, heartbreaking, the worst person just made a very good point. So I am not going to dedicate any more airtime to Kirk Cameron. So we're going to be moving on. So tonight we're going to talk about the anti-woke nerd, because they don't piss me off today. We're going to talk a little bit about the journey of a little bit about God of War, and talk about what it says about parenting and dealing with grief. and then have another edition of weirdest shit I've ever seen, which is Batman versus Superman. Um, just because it does deserve ridicule. It deserves to be mocked. One of the things is Batman versus Superman hit at a weird time in my life. It dropped, right, like that was the first movie that that was the first date my wife and I went on after my mom died. One of the first ones, one of the first outings, and so it was kind of trying to capture some normality after our lives kind of got turned upside down. And so it's the movie, the weirdness of that movie, is the kookiness of that movie is seared into my brain. And so is her reaction, because that was one of the things that was a bright spot for me, because I can always go back and laugh at that piece of it. So but yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about. And so buckle in. This is kind of what we got going tonight. All right. There's a whole grift going. If you're not aware, there's a whole grift on YouTube, the anti-woke nerd. And typically the anti-woke nerd is around my age. Sometimes they're a little bit younger, but basically your typical, and there's some people that are anomalies to this. There's going to be black dudes that do the anti-woke nerd thing, but typically it's going to be disgruntled white nerd who is mad because there's a black person in a movie that they don't think a black person should be in. They're occupying a space that they don't think they should be in. And so they're going to create an entire screed about it and do a whole video about it. And for some reason, it's disproportionately Star Wars. Like, the Star Wars community is really bad with it. They're obnoxious with it. Harry Potter was bad with it, but Star Wars is really, really super obnoxious with it. But it's not just contained to that specific subgroup of nerds. It spreads around. Every specific nerd subcategory, you're going to find the anti-woke nerd. You can find them in the wrestling community. It's really weird. The wrestling community, internet wrestling communities, that has that, comic books, of course, science fiction, especially when you start getting into the more high, like the hard sci-fi stuff. That's where you really find it with some of the adaptations. And so the anti-woke nerd is, they don't hate wokeness. Here's the thing, and this is just my thesis on the whole thing, but they want to display unlimited amounts of bigotry and not receive any of the social consequences that come with it. Like, they want to be as hateful and as spiteful to any marginalized group that they want. I'm talking from a black perspective, so that's who I'm going to talk to. But they don't want anybody to socially sanction them in terms of, I don't want to fuck with them anymore. I don't want to watch their videos no more. I don't want to see them on my screen anymore. I don't want to let them exist on social media saying this without them hearing my piece of it. And so that's the crux of the whole thing. And I got a couple of working things here. So just ride with me on this one. But a lot of it has to do with, they don't like the concept of other nerd groups challenging them. They want to be able to say this shit never be challenged, right? So we're going to go into a little bit of the etymology of the word woke, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I feel like we spend too much time explaining racism to racist people, and I don't really want to do that, but we're going to do it a little bit. So when we start talking about the word woke, if you're looking at some of the etymology of it and it's kind of started in around the Harlem Renaissance. And it's just being awake, having your eyes open to the ways of racism and white supremacy. And that's kind of where it started out. A Harlem Renaissance on the blues scene, and it crossed over to the jazz scene. And it was something that we used kind of in community off and on for a number of years, more on in recent years than off, if that makes sense. And so when you hear somebody like, because black people, we've been using the word woke amongst ourselves for a while. And I know it kind of came back into favor again, but it's something that I've heard since I was little. Like, it's not a new phrase. Um, and so what happened is, and it happens with a lot of things that are considered that are black coded, or things that are associated with black folks, or even uh, turns of phrases that we use and stuff. Because we can even go back to when people started saying cool. Like, we started, like, in the jazz community, black folks were saying cool, right? And then it kind of drifted over and expanded to the other communities in the 50s, right? And then it ended up becoming a way to specifically denigrate black people, where it came as a sarcastic kind of statement. Oh, I bet you think you're really cool, huh? That's what's happening with woke. Like, um, and here's the frustrating part about it. It's one thing if the usage of the word had fallen out of favor, and then you're saying, well, the way that our modern lexicon works, it'll take words and then redefine them when they've fallen out of favor and stuff like that. But to take a word that black people have been utilized, that were back people were actively using, and say, now it means this now. You're basically telling all these black people over here, like, yeah, this thing that you've been utilizing in your community doesn't mean the thing that you mean anymore. It means what we tell you it means now. Um, and here's the thing. I know a lot of the entire woke, like this entire concept of demonizing of the word woke, was kind of a Christopher Rufo. Look him up if you don't know what I'm talking about, because he is a real piece of shit. But he's also one of the main architects of a lot of anti-black stuff going on in the federal government. Like, he is the guy that's created that. And so the woke campaign, and they even talked about it as a marketing campaign. Like, it was all a marketing campaign. They wanted to take a word to bludgeon black people with. Like, they said they wanted to get all the other non-white groups and all the groups that are on the fringe ideologies and stuff. It was anti-black. Like, that's how it goes. And typically in this country, when you want to hard sell an idea to a group of people that have a predilection for bigotry, an affinity for bigotry, typically if you paint a black face on it, it's an easy enemy to attack, easy straw man to knock down. I'm done talking about woke. All right. But the word is kind of morphed into a catch-all for things that I don't like, including anyone not white, male, or straight. Okay. And so it was a marketing campaign, and they successfully did that. And DEI was another marketing campaign. Was the other one that they talked about, because I've actually read some of the transcripts of him interacting with other people. Critical race theory was another marketing campaign, where it was a political marketing campaign where we're going to build negative sentiment about this thing that we've loosely defined. We've redefined it, unmoored it from its real definition, slapped a definition on that we can market to people that don't really know what it is, and now that becomes the new definition of things. If you don't believe me, you can look it up. I have no reason to lie to you guys about this. But that's kind of what it was. And so that was the entire thing. And so now it's become this subgenre of grifters who initially it started out as the format of white dude gets on YouTube, bitches and moans about media, right? And then it morphed into something a little bit more pointed. Where, first it started out talking about, well, this is a political message. And then it started going into, why is this woman here? And then it just morphed into something else. And so that's kind of the grift. That is the grift. You find a piece of media that has, and here's the thing, because they did it with Old Boy in Star Wars, right? Like, with the dude that played Finn in Star Wars, he became the focal point of these hate campaigns. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that he was vocal, and he didn't sit there and tolerate the fandom. It's condescending bullshit towards him. And I'm gonna get into this a little bit about different nerd communities, but he didn't tolerate the fandom's bullshit and outright disrespect towards him and his co-stars. And he didn't mince words with them, and he'd be online arguing with them. He didn't hold his tongue back, and he didn't hold his tongue. And so it turned into this war, this back and forth war between Daniel Boyega and the Star Wars community. And a lot of Star Wars nerds showed their complete and total ass. Here's something I'm gonna tell you, and I'm jumping a little bit ahead in my script, but um, I want to point this out, and I'm jumping way ahead actually. So the theory I'm working with is, for a long time before we had the internet, nerd communities existed kind of independently and unaware of each other's presence. Specifically, the white nerd community was insular, right? And they were because they had to keep out people that were going to marginalize them, right? And so they were really kind of an insular community where you had to prove who you were to gain access to that community, because they were so used to getting bullied or whatnot, or out, being the outcast or whatnot. And so a lot of these white nerd communities kind of built themselves, and they thought that because there were no other black people, or the black nerds or brown nerds or female nerds they ran into were so few and far between, that they thought that they were the only group of nerds out there. And what they didn't understand was there were nerd communities that weren't white, that weren't male, that weren't straight, that were forming in their own little bubbles. And they were fully aware of these white nerds over here, but since they can't really access and hang out with them because of a lot of weird racism, which seems to be a byproduct of nerd. I don't understand it, but they couldn't necessarily interact with this white nerd group. So we're fully aware, like black nerds are fully aware of white nerds. Like we are fully aware of them. But we knew that we couldn't be around them because it always got weird and racist, like at the strangest times. And so we had our own nerd communities that we shared our stuff and our loves. And so I know a lot of black Star Wars nerds, and I grew up with a lot of black Star Wars nerds. It wasn't like just a white thing. I grew up with I grew up with black folks that like Mystery Science Theater just like I did. Okay. And so there weren't the gang of us, but there was a group of us that knew about it. And so I think what happened was white nerds kind of assumed that because they didn't see nerds they just assumed that being a nerd was a white thing. And then internet comes along, and you start seeing more black people specifically, but other marginalized communities, and having nerd communities and doing some of the nerd signifiers. I already told you about the story about going to Whole Foods, and little white dude was gonna basically drill me on my Secret Wars t-shirt and who the characters were. Like I was just faking the funk on him. But that's the kind of stuff we got used to. And so white nerds assumed that they was the only ones who liked Star Wars. Who else is there? Star Trek. I knew a bunch of black Star Trek fans that were Star Wars nerds. It was weird, even like back in the days, my comic book store was Dragon's Lair. Like going in the Dragon's Lair was weird. Because you would like the white nerds in there were acting like I was some kind of invader, and all I was doing was just trying to get the latest issue of X-Men after Claremont came back. Or then when Jim Lee took over. That's all I was trying to do. But the weird assumption was I was just this outsider. I'm a pretender to the crown, a pretender to the throne, if you will. And so internet comes along, and white nerds are suddenly made aware of all these other nerd communities. And instead of assuming, oh, well, these nerd communities have the same amount of skin in the game as we do, they've been doing the nerd thing for as long as we have. The assumption is, well, that group of girl nerds over there they're just nerds because they think it's cool. Group of black nerds over there, they're just nerds because they think it's cool, because it's trendy. We're the real OGs. They're all pretenders. And that's what happened. And so that's where this anti-woke nerd stuff, I think that's kind of where it started out. I'm trying to find the word for it, but metastasized started out where it started, where the whole thing started, where they assumed that they're the only ones in this nerd culture life. And everybody else was a pretender. And so their reaction to seeing more diversity specifically in the media, because the thing you got to understand about how capitalism works is, once capitalism finds another viable audience, instantly that viable audience is going to start being reflected in whatever capitalism produces when it comes to media. And so as soon as they determine there's another viable audience, capitalism is going to make sure that we're going to see more black people, more brown people, more gay people, more women in these roles that historically have been reserved for white males. And the white nerd community didn't take that well. They didn't like sharing that spot because they felt that was their little enclave. You hear these weird conversations that they have, like weird conversations like, well, you made this character black. Okay, well, I mean, it's not a key character component. Their skin color isn't necessarily a key character component of this specific character. It's not a specific trait that fundamentally changes who the character is. So I guess it's not a big deal. Well, that ruins my ability to have an escapist fantasy. So your escapist fantasy is escaping from seeing black folks. Like, you're trying to escape from seeing niggas. That's kind of what it is. That's what it sounds like. And so, and even goes into something I'm going to be talking about later on in the God of War franchise, where Atreus meets Agrabodom. And there were nerds that were up in arms about the fact that there were black characters in God of War. And they're like, well, this is the Viking. This is kind of set in Asgard and Vikings, and there were no black Asgardians. There were no Asgardians. It's not real. Doesn't exist. What's the last census they did of Asgard? Show me the demographics say on it. This is all fantasy. It's all high fantasy. You can have whatever you want in high fantasy. It's so stupid. I remember that when black people they were mad because they had the black Superman of, I think it was Earth 2. President Superman, they was mad at him. There weren't any black Kryptonians. Did we take a census of Krypton and I didn't know about it? How did you determine this? So they're up in arms about, and to the point now, even when you go on Reddit, there are people who show mods of the God of War game where they made Agrabah a white girl and say, oh, they improved the game. Really stupid, uptight, hypersensitive nonsense. Because her being black didn't change the story. And she wasn't even Asgardian. She was a giant. She is Jotnar. Jotnars can be like, they had a giant bird. You can be a bird. You can be a giant eagle that is 5,000 feet tall, I think. But you can't be a black giant in God of War. What? You could be a giant stone man, but you better not be a black giant in God of War. It's ridiculous. And so anyway, white nerds had to suddenly were aware of other nerd communities, and they didn't take it well. And then they see the fact that the function of media, since media knows that there's a market for the black people buy tickets to movies too, and black people buy video games, maybe we need to show them some black people occasionally. They didn't take that very well. They felt like they're giving up something. They were being forced out. It was an invasion. And then with the grift side of it, where and I don't want to necessarily throw angry video game nerd under the bus, because he hadn't really, that really wasn't his jam. Neither Nostalgia Critic, even though I'm not a huge fan of his stuff anymore. Like I went through, I think everybody on their internet journey, if you're a nerd, you go through your Nostalgia Critic phase, angry video game nerd phase, and I'm not saying it's them specifically, but they are they set the stage for a lot of these nerds who are angry that how dare this black person be on my screen. It was a game where they were mad because it was a game about the black samurai that's in lore in Japan, like African samurai, and they were mad because he was black. They're actually going to do, I think, an Assassin's Creed game that was set in Haiti after the slave revolt, and they got mad, and then they ended up pulling it. A lot of people, like, at the end of the day, they're just triggered by seeing black people. We have to call it what it is. So one of the things that these audiences do, and the reason why I'm not throwing Angry Video Game Nerd under the bus is because he actually got victimized by this audience of people where, you know, that group, that subgroup hounds him and harasses him and hounds his wife and all this other stuff and has really ugly things to say about him and his wife and things like that, because they feel like out of this parasocial bond that they made with him, they feel like his wife is ruining all their fun. Stupid, weird behavior. So one of the things that these anti-woke nerds do is they weaponize their audience. They cry censorship, but as soon as somebody prominent challenges them, they sick their audience on them. You know, I got into it with the fans, like some fans of The Quartering. I didn't even know who the white boy was. I didn't even know who this dude was. And they were coming for my neck on Twitter. And I didn't even say anything. All I did was make a comment. I had a bunch of these jokers in my mentions. I didn't even know who he was before. But they will say that they're not they don't incite violence, and they can't, but they don't really necessarily call off their audience, and they don't take the steps to prevent their audience from trying to dogpile somebody. And so it comes in the form of doxing, harassment, and they just unleash their audience on people. And marginalized creators face actual silencing. And it's not performative martyrdom. They will dox us. They will try to get people's channels taken down. It's the same thing when a game comes out with a black character that they don't want, and they instantly will go to Metacritic and absolutely review bomb it before they even played a second of the game, or a show that they don't like that has a black person in a role that they don't want to see. They will review bomb it. They try to do the same thing. It's only, and the threat is, well, they're making it political. By putting a black person in this, they're making it political. I think by responding to this black person here, you're making it political. It's only political when somebody who doesn't look like you is centered. Okay. When I was growing up, and I'm about to date myself, I was growing up, Friends and Seinfeld were all white, like literally the whitest shows you're ever gonna see. We watched them. I would watch Living Single. I didn't watch Friends. I'm not even gonna front. I didn't watch Friends. My wife watched Friends. I didn't watch Friends. I didn't fuck with Friends. Okay, she said she didn't watch Friends either. So fuck Friends. Fuck Friends in this household. We didn't watch Friends. I watched Seinfeld though. Like, it's one of my favorite shows. They had one recurring black dude on that show. Okay. There was no uproar. But as soon as we start having all black casts, entire Living Single, how Friends essentially ripped their premise off from Living Single is one thing. But look at it like this. Black Mermaid is forced diversity. Black Panther, the movie Black Panther, was an all black cast mostly. They had to put the white dude in there, Everett Ross. They had to put him in there somewhere. But they were saying it was a political statement. When it was when it's all black cast is a political statement. Sinners was a political statement. That's why is a political statement? Because there's mostly black people, and black people are centered. And that's the thing y'all got to understand about black life in America. Our lives are political. Our existence is politicized. Me just showing up in a place where you don't think I belong is a political statement to you. Not to me. I'm just existing. But to specific people, it becomes a political statement. Other people, they just want to keep other people out of what they perceive to be their stories. Okay. So we talked about the white nerd bubble. A lot of this stuff comes from the anonymity. And here's the thing. So I'm old enough to not have participated in the COD lobbies. I was too old. I was a grown man. I logged on once, got called the hard R by a 10-year-old, and that was the last time I hopped on the COD lobbies. And I know a lot of black kids that are younger are conditioned in these online lobbies to be called any slur and all slurs. That's not what I grew up with. And for a lot of these white kids, this is how they're testing their boundaries. They get to say the forbidden word and their friends giggle, he. It's like cussing on the playground for them. And they get conditioned to, we just saw he. I say the N-word, he. And we're just racist to this black person, he, y'all. And that's what it is. It turns into this kind of a joke thing. It's just edgelord shit. Toxic voice chat. It taught people to confuse that with I'm standing on the edge. I'm being a vanguard. I'm being a rebel by jumping in the COD lobby and saying the N-word every 5 minutes. Like, right? I can't even say it on my own, Joe. Like, I can't even say it without risking this stop popping up. But I can log on and play if I wanted to go into like I think COD. I haven't done COD in years, but there's a reason why I don't mess with Overwatch. Like, I don't do the Overwatch voice chat. I tried it and instantly ran into toxicity. It was crazy. People talk to you crazy on there. And I think there's this disconnect between, and it might be an age thing. It could be. I don't know. When I was growing up, where I grew up, words could absolutely get your ass whooped. Like, your words could absolutely cause you to get your ass beat. And the severity of your words could determine the severity of the ass whooping you was about to get. Words could lead to violence. And I think for a lot of kids out in the burbs, that was something that, well, words are one thing, but your words should never lead to you getting punched in the face. And that's what they grew up with. That's the ethos they grew up with. So they grew up with this ethos of, I can talk crazy to anybody and nothing will ever happen. There are statutes in different states where there are fighting word statutes where there's specific words, and if you say it to somebody, they're within their rights to beat your ass. And I think that that's something that got lost in this online discourse thing, where you could talk crazy to people. And it started a lot in these video game chat room lobbies because they say this crazy shit around their friends and they all laugh about it like it's the funniest thing in the world. But really, it's their show of rebellion, right? That's how they rebel against their parents. It's not listening to, back when we were growing up, it's not listening to death metal or watching Headbangers Ball or getting a piercing or a tattoo, smoking or any other stuff. It's being a Nazi. Being a Nazi, acting like a Nazi online. That's their sign of rebellion against their parents, against the status quo. And part of it came along with it is getting in chat rooms and absolutely just being the most obnoxious little racist they could possibly be. That's how they were edgy. And kids were using slurs to look rebellious. They grew up into these anti-woke adults. Same bullshit rebellion. They just got a better mic. Okay. And so they think that real freedom is never being challenged on the words that they say. They think that they should be able to heap unlimited amounts of bigotry onto marginalized people, and then freedom is us not responding or us not disassociating or us getting their pages shut down. Letting advertisers know this is the kind of stuff that they're saying on this channel. Do you want your brand associated with this? Somehow people don't understand the rules of capitalism and how capitalism actually works. But there's a suburban disconnect, okay? When I think people don't understand the N word. When I say the N word, I'm talking about the hard R. You know what I'm talking about. Um, I think people don't understand that when we're talking about black people, it was always used, it always came with violence, with violent actions. It was used to dehumanize. They call you Nick, they call you the word, and then they spit on you, or they assault you, or threaten you. And so for us, that word has that tinge to it, the hard R does. And when it comes external from the community, because there are black folks that will tell the black folks, don't call me that. And that's perfectly fine. But when it comes from external to the community, it started out as external insult to the community, and we tried to desensitize ourselves from it. And some people were with it, other people were not, and that's perfectly fine. Black people aren't a monolith. But what I am saying is this: the false equivalence of, well, we call each other that, so why can't the white man call? That's ridiculous. Come on, man. You know that there's different context based on who's utilizing the word. Just like you have pet names for your wife or girlfriend. If some other dude called your wife or girlfriend by them pet names, you'd be trying to fight him. For some of my contemporaries that I know, some of my white contemporaries, they would cuss their mama out. Absolutely cuss their mama out. But if you cuss their mama out, they'd be ready to fight you. Like like I said, I knew white dudes that would cuss their mama out. It was like for me and the black folks around, like, damn, man, that's wild. You survived? What? I watched a white dude cuss his mom out, bro. It was crazy work. Just jaw dropping. So anyway, so the idea of it's just words. If it's just words, let me cuss your mom out real quick. Like, where I grew up, words could absolutely lead to violence. And that specific word could lead to violence. And if you think it doesn't, I invite you to go to any black barber shop on Saturday morning and show them how liberated you are by saying the N-word freely. Show them brothers how liberated you are. See what the response is, especially if you got some cats that are older who actually lived through some aspects of either segregation or post-civil rights. I know a couple older brothers that will absolutely try to put you in the ground. I think I'm related to one of them by marriage. They'll put you in the ground for that word. Okay. But you've never paid for your words. When you've never been held accountable for your words, it feels like oppression when somebody finally holds you accountable for the things that you say. And like I said, people have the ability to divest from you based on what you say. And a lot of these anti-woke nerd streamers, they don't get it. And here's the thing. Some of them ain't never gonna change, right? Like, I look at what's that fool's name who had that terrible take about the Clips album? It wasn't PewDiePie, was it? I don't think it was PewDiePie, but he's one of them. Their platform is big enough where they're never going to have a consequence for saying something offensive or saying something racist, because there's always going to be another outlet for them. Society set up to benefit them. But some of these other aspiring, grifting, anti-woke YouTubers, nerds, anti-woke nerds, you absolutely can be held accountable for some of the racist things you say on your stream. And the craziest part is, it's weird because you could even go on like YouTube or whatnot and see these racist dog whistle thumbnails, bro. It's the craziest thing imaginable. And that's what kind of got me on this, is because one of them was complaining about some black person where they didn't think a black person was, and they made a whole video about it. They just said, we're going to make a video about this. This black person doesn't belong here. We're going to make a video about it. And that's kind of the grift. And they attract other people that are in that kind of aligned with what they think, and so that's how they build the audience. But anyway, it's freedom of speech with freedom of speech and freedom of consequence. You could say it, but I decide when you could say it, but or I could say it, but you can't hold me accountable for it. And then weaponizing the audience. So here's what I'm saying. This platform is for Black nerds. If you aren't a Black nerd, but you align with what I'm saying, this platform's for you. But this is for us here, because our journey through this nerd stuff is different. Just like I said, the first time I interacted with white Star Wars fans was really an eye-opening experience, because normally it was just me and my boys talking about Star Wars, and you interact with white Star Wars fans and you link up, you're like, all right, it's cool until they say something out of pocket crazy, especially with some of the newer stuff, and you kind of got to reevaluate the circle. But this is a platform for Black nerds. If you don't like what I'm saying, there's other platforms for you to go participate in, but this is our spot. And so I will hold my ground saying a lot of the anti-nerd stuff, anti-woke nerd stuff is just another form of grifting, because a lot of times, even when you look at some of the media analysis they do, it's not good media analysis. The most surface net level banal kind of stuff where it doesn't really deconstruct media and talk about some of the social framings or whatnot. Like, you can't do media analysis and not have it take a political slant, because it has to filter through the world that we're experiencing right now. And a lot of times when you do media analysis, it filters through your specific perspective. And that always has a political tinge to it. So I'm holding my square. I'm standing on my square. A lot of the anti-woke nerd stuff is just grifting. They've just found a new way to do angry video game nerds stick, with more inwords, because I've never heard him say that stuff. And so that's what I got. There's going to be more about anti-woke nerds, because they exist, and that's going to be a topic that's going to be ongoing. And especially since we're in this nerd space, they're going to try to take up space in here. And eventually, as my footprint grows, I'm probably going to be coming in, drawing the ire of some of these people. So I'm just kind of anticipating it. I've already dealt with their audiences, and I'm a nobody on here. So I know what it's going to look like once I build an audience around this. Okay. Again, another plug. I am building out a community, the League of Extraordinary Aunties and Uncles. It's going to be a place for Black nerds where we can sit down and talk about what's going on in our specific passions. Maybe even have some places where we can share some of our creative things that, for Black creatives, where we can share our latest videos or our latest comic books and stuff like that. And it's going to be kind of a lounge for us. I haven't figured out what the price point is, and I haven't figured out exactly where I'm hosting this, but it's going to be a kind of a community that's going to be paid. It's for us to hang out with. And so that's what I'm trying to build. We'll see what that looks like. All right. So segment 2. So for those that follow me that know, my main game has been Overwatch 2, and I needed to take a break from it because it was bumming me out. It was bumming me out. It's frustrating. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I don't really do voice chat, and sometimes your ceilings are limited when you do voice chat. And other times is when I first started playing Overwatch, I was really bad at it. I was exceptionally bad at it, and I was bad at it for a number of years because I didn't bother how to learn the game. I didn't bother to learn how to play the game. And so that put my score in one place, and it just kept it there. I've started other accounts, and I've played on other accounts, and I rank a lot higher than where I'm currently stuck at, where I'm currently trapped. And one of the things about games like Overwatch is your outcomes are dictated by who they put on your team. And if they put a lot of inexperienced players on your team, you're going to be forced to be in positions where you got to hard carry a team that's actively working against you. And so it just became too much. It wasn't necessarily as fun anymore. And so I took a break from it. And so what that meant was I went back and replayed God of War 2 or God of War Ragnarok, because I never did New Game Plus on it. I beat it, and never really did New Game Plus on it. And so at first I started and finished all the side missions or whatnot and tried to get 100%. I think there was some Normir chests that I didn't get that kept me like at 92% for a lot of the maps. But I decided to go New Game Plus. And so I started playing it again. And God of War is like my favorite like video game franchise. Like everybody has their specific franchise. My best friend is a huge Resident Evil. Like he loves everything Resident Evil, and he will play every Resident Evil game that drops. That's how I am a God of War. I think I've played every single one of them except the ones that were on the handheld. And so that's always been my game. And so I was I was over the moon when they dropped God of War 2018 when I first heard about it, because I got fired up like, okay, so we got an open world God of War game. And what I wasn't expecting, and it was kind of a pleasant surprise, it was to see a more chilled and subdued kind of Kratos, where he actually felt like a human, where he actually felt like a person. I know in that universe he's a demigod, but he actually felt like an actual person as opposed to just my vessel of inflicting violence and harm on people, because that's what he was in the earlier games. And I talked about it last week how one of the original creators of God of War is mad because they made Kratos soft. They made him feel like a real person as opposed to this vehicle of vengeance or whatnot. And so I wasn't really prepared for watching this character arc, but it was really good. And it hits differently when you play it as a parent. Because essentially you're watching what that story is his grief journey of losing his wife and having to forge a relationship with a child that he never really had a great relationship starting out, outside of my dad is my authority kind of thing. And it just shows them going through the grief journey, but then also him forging a real relationship with his son. It just hits differently. And I've talked to a lot of parents who've done it, who've gone through the journey of playing that game. There are times where you get misty just watching how this thing plays out. Okay. But I'm gonna give you a quick rundown and then talk about some themes of it. And I'm probably going to be taking a much deeper dive on this because there's some specific lessons that watching this and watching Kratos grow, the writing is really good, but watching him grow as a person, and as a parent and as a character, there's some good parenting lessons that are actually baked into it. And I'm telling you this as somebody who used to teach parenting classes. So I do know, I do have some experience with that. Okay. But the first part is dealing with his grief. And when we first join our character in the first game in 2018 God of War, he just lost his wife, and he and his son are fulfilling her dying wish, which is her ashes will be spread from the highest peak in the land. Now, there's a whole lot of spoilers that I'm not going to get into if you have not played it, but that last wish starts off their adventure, and it's a big arc that is meant to force these characters together and force them to grow. So you get to see Kratos and his son Atreus actually bond over this thing, and they go through lots of pits, they go through lots of peaks and lots of valleys. They go through lots of valleys in the first game. Okay, but basically they're carrying her memory to deposit it from the highest peak in the land. Kratos buries, he had come from Greece with a lot of trauma. He had gone through an entire pantheon of gods. He basically slaughtered his entire family out of vengeance because they made him kill his wife. They tricked him into killing his wife and kid, and also stole his brother from him. And so he had suffered immense harm from the Greek pantheon of gods, and he was maladjusted, which is a very light way of putting it. And he lashed out and absolutely eradicated an entire pantheon of gods. But then these gods were also his family. Very complex. Very complex trauma to unpack. And so part of becoming the new Kratos was bearing those blades of chaos, which were kind of his signature weapon, and trying to start out as something new. Okay. And then the entire process of kind of going a little bit back to who he was because he has to save his son. And understanding that just because you know the story, a lot of it has to do with the fact just because you experienced a thing does not mean that thing has to be your story forever. And even if it is your story forever, it doesn't have to drive up negative outcomes for you. It doesn't have to destroy your life. You can make the choice to be better. No matter what you've done, you can always make the choice the next day, the next moment, the next second to be better than you were. That's what the overarching theme of the second game really was. The first game was Kratos and Atreus' grief journey and kind of learning to be around each other and learning how to be a father and son. And then the second game was, okay, so now Kratos is coming to terms with who he is and seeing his drama play out in the Asgardian pantheon. Try not to say too much. Okay. It also deals with a lot of the concept of fatalism and how prophecies are saying one thing, he's out there to disprove and rewrite his destiny. And also dealing with his anger at himself, because his anger at himself manifested in anger towards his son. His self-loathing absolutely became part of Atreus's burden for a while. And he had to make the conscious decision to break the cycle. Okay. He is fighting against the way that he was conditioned and raised. Okay. Even something as simple as in 2018, he would always call Atreus boy. Boy. That's how he would say it. That's how he referred to him. He didn't use his name, boy. And then in the sequel, he says Atreus. He says his actual name. It's a small thing, but it matters. Okay. And so it shows growth and restraint and acceptance. Okay. And the entire arc, it just winds down and shows that he is worthy of redemption and forgiveness. Regardless of how he felt about himself, he can choose to be better than he was. And it's reflected in his relationship with his son. Him not making the same mistakes that his father, who was Zeus, made with him when Zeus tried to kill him multiple times. Okay. And so there's a lot about generational trauma and not passing down the trauma you experience to your kids, and stuff like that. And it's just, if you ever get a chance to sit down and spend time with those games, I strongly advise you to, because it's not just playing it, but it's actually watching the interactions and watching these characters grow. Like I said, I'm trying not to give away too many spoilers because I'm doing a longer video about this because I'm so enamored of the game. And so you're going to be seeing, that might be the actual first video essay I've done, because that's the one I've spent the most time researching and writing. And so I think that's going to be it. And like I said, if you're looking for a game, if you want to know, because people talk about video games and stuff, if you want to see a video game be art, God of War, the God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok are your games. You don't even have to play the original games because they tell you a lot. Oh, and I'm not going to forget Valhalla. Valhalla was like a therapy session. Like Valhalla was Kratos going to therapy. It was really heavy. There's a lot of heavy stuff, and there's a lot of him coming to terms with the stuff that he had done in the past. And it wasn't him rationalizing it or anything. It's coming to terms with who he was and coming to terms with that's not all he was, if that makes sense. He just wasn't the sum of his violent and lustful urges. he was more than that. And he never saw himself up until that point as more than that. It was a heavy message, bro. Like, I'm just telling you, if you get a chance, sit down and play it, and just really enjoy the action is good, but the story is really good too. Okay, I'm gonna be doing a longer piece on that, y'all. So buckle up, stay tuned for that one. And I'm probably gonna be doing more talks directly about some of the direct lessons of the franchise that a parent can take away from it. Because there are some really strong lessons about accountability and allowing your kids to make their own mistakes, which is something I have to take to heart because I'm the one that will try to throw myself down on the wire to keep my kids from making mistakes, and they got to make the mistakes. But it's hard for me. Um, and so, but there's a lot in there. There's a lot. There are very specific scenes in there that just hit like a cannonball. So I advise you to play it if you get a chance to. It's a journey. It's like watching a movie, but also playing the game. It's like it's just a good experience. So anyway, and I've already finished my second new game. Plus, I'm probably going to go back for a round 3 to see at the highest difficulty just to test myself. Because now it's me against the game. I've gone through the story twice, and so now it's just me against my skills. So, all right. Next edition of weirdest shit I've ever seen. And I know I have to do a character issues for y'all because I did like the character issues. I'm overwhelmed with choices about what I want to do. I'm thinking about doing the character issues on the Hulk, but it's always impulsive because before I get into my next segment, right now I'm trying to give Predators Kill the Marvel Universe a chance. I'm trying. I hate those books. I really do hate Such and Such Kills the Marvel Universe. I do not like those books on a fundamental level. But I'm trying because Predator is one of my favorite IPs out there. But it's really stretching my ability to is really testing my ability to invest in this. Watching the Predators just them nerf all of these characters so the Predators have this advantage is absolutely maddening. To the point where I'm probably going to be doing the character issues of the Hulk because I don't feel like Hulk gets his due in comic books. And so this is going to be more me talking about his feats and everything. I also do want to kind of do an autopsy of what they've done with Spider-Man because what they've done to my boy is disgusting. They will not let him grow up. They will not let Peter win. And I'm tired of I'm tired of them not letting Peter win. Everybody else has won. Tony Stark has won and lost and won and lost and won and lost. Peter can't get a win. And it's been 50 damn years. 60. And he can't get a win. So anyway, but I owe y'all a characters issue, so I'm probably figuring out what that's gonna look like, so I can record that and drop that on the YouTube channel. But segment 3 is gonna be it's a follow up to weirdest shit I've ever seen. Because last week we talked about Superman Returns, and that was supposed to be the thing that reignites the DC universe. Like DC universe has had a lot of false starts, and here's why I will say the MCU had the DCU beat. The idea of having a compelling, a coherent through line through the movies and having a shared universe made sense. And having people who oversaw each project, it might have constrained the directors and it pissed a lot of directors off, but at least the movies stayed kind of consistent more or less with each other. The thing that DC didn't do when they turned it over to Zack Snyder, I know that was his task to try to create a DC cinematic universe. And Zack Snyder is a fabulous visual artist. Like from a visual artist standpoint, he's astonishing. He's Michael Bay level of astonishing. When it comes to adapting original work, like if he's doing a panel for panel reshooting like he did with 300, where it's panel for panel, amazing, mind-blowing. If he's doing something that even has slightly original, we need to kind of put some handcuffs on, bro. Like he will go off the rails, because one of the things I've kind of peeped with Zack Snyder is he reminds me of the dudes I used to meet in the comic book store who they came in the comic books as teenagers, and during the 90s everything was dark and edgy, and they become edgelords via comic book. And so they're the guys that picked up the Batman books when it was it Azrael, John Paul Valley, after Bane broke his back, and Batman was dark and gritty. Dark and gritty, more dark and gritty than he had been, because he had been dark and gritty before, but we're going to make her darker and grittier. And it was just bleak and dark for the sake of being bleak and dark. And so he reminds me of those guys, where it's the reason why I don't really mess with what Mark Miller. I don't mess with Mark Miller stuff, bro. It's edgelord. It's edgelord crap. He infected the original Ultimate Marvel universe with a lot of the edgelord stuff. Kick-Ass was a bunch of edgelord fantasy. I don't really align with that. Like, I don't align with dude that you can tell never experienced American street crime trying to write American street crime. Like, Garth Ennis probably nailed it the best, and I know he didn't experience it, but he was also a war comics fan. So when he did Punisher Max, there was a frame of reference there. But Zack Snyder was he took Superman and made him like this edgelord kind of Superman, like the edgy, brooding Superman that nobody asked for. Like, this whole thing is gonna look like we just clapped some eraser dust over the movie. We just wiped a chalkboard eraser over the movie and made it gray for no reason, even on a bright blue day. That it's gray. Like, the gray is the movie is grayer than you can imagine. And Superman's just going to be this traumatized thing. What's going to happen is, in the first movie, we're going to kill his dad in the dumbest way humanly possible. And this is not supposed to be an autopsy of Man of Steel, because I actually kind of like Man of Steel, but you can start seeing the through points through this, right? The tortured Superman. And then we got Batman versus Superman, which I stand my ground on this one. If you watch I Am Legend, there's a poster for Batman versus Superman in there. And what I think happened was Warner Brothers said, hey, we got this Batman versus Superman poster. We're going to make a movie on it. We're going to make a movie about it. And by God, they were going to have Batman fight Superman. It didn't matter if it didn't make any sense. It didn't matter if they didn't have a story. By God, they were going to have a Batman versus Superman movie. And that's what we got. We got our by God Batman versus Superman movie. So we're going to jump into this. Now, here's the framing. This is the first movie I'm seeing right after my mom died. Like, it's our first kind of date night where I'm trying to get to normal again. One of the things I associate with my mom's passing was, one, binging Luke Cage on Netflix, and us going out to see Batman versus Superman. So it's kind of a mental signpost for me, because I was going, like, we were experiencing a lot. And so it was the first time where I could actually go out and actually feel something, because I had spent, that entire time numb. And so that movie was the first time I felt something again. And it was feeling humor and laughing at how my wife reacted to this movie. So, opening flashback, we get to see Martha Wayne get shot in the face. Zack Snyder wasn't fucking around, bro. Opening scene, we get to see Martha Wayne get shot in the face. Slow-mo, straight to the face. And then there are bats. Okay? And this is the next scene, and I'm kind of jumping around. The next scene that I remember is Bruce hallucinating when he fell down the well and getting lifted up by bats. Now, this is the first time my wife checked out. Like, you could see her, like, because they didn't clearly define whether this was a hallucination. They didn't clearly state, like, so you actually were watching this and thinking this was happening, and she's like, what? Yeah, it's a hallucination. The bats are carrying him along, but they didn't make that really obvious. And so that was the first time where I felt her, like, I started feeling her emotionally start kind of withdrawing a little bit from the movie, because it was kind of a jarring thing to experience. The way that the scene was framed, you couldn't tell it was real. And I know that that was kind of thematic choice, but it felt weird. Here's the thing: Batman versus Superman felt like a lot of this movie was cut out of it. A lot of this movie was cut out. And so as a result of so much being cut out, there are just things that don't make any sense. The bat scene where he fell down the well was the first time. Okay. So now we cross over to the Man of Steel fallout. Adult Bruce watches Metropolis start collapsing during Superman's battle with Zod. And so now watching Superman stop this world-destroying alien from destroying the world pissed Batman off something fierce, where he's mad that Superman stopped Zod from terraforming Earth. And so because Zod isn't around, it's Superman's fault, even though he's singularly the person that stopped this from happening. Now, I don't know what Batman was doing, because at any point in time, he could have hopped in here and helped out a little bit. But he was mad because of reasons. And I'm not saying because of reasons, because there was catastrophic fallout. People got hurt and killed behind the Superman thing. But it wasn't like Superman was intentionally going around destroying buildings. Well, he kind of was. But he was also, it was for the greater good. That's why I'm going to say it. It was for the greater good. Like Frozone. It was for the greater good. But at the same time, Clark Kent is an investigative journalist, so he's investigating the bat. And Superman has mistrust because he sees Batman's vigilantism as dangerous. Now, there's a weird romantic subplot that's happening, and it's the romantic subplot between Superman and Lois Lane. And this is the next scene where my wife checked out. Like, this was like almost her breaking point. There was a very specific scene, and it's supposed to be romantic. I don't know who wrote this. Lois is in the bathtub, and Clark comes in, and they're talking about something. And then in a romantic way, supposedly, fully clothed, shoes on. This dude came in from outside. He was outside, walking around on the streets with dress shoes on and everything. He climbs in the bathtub, shoes and everything, climbs into the bathtub, fully clothed. I know my wife. That absolutely freaked her out. It freaked her. That was a shoes on the bed moment. That was, he might as well come in with muddy shoes and put them on the bed for her, in her mind, because that was the second time she's like, hold on. Why does he have shoes on getting in the tub? And it's a personal thing, but that was the next moment where I just kind of felt her withdraw a little bit more from the movie. And I kind of look over at her, I could just see her face. It's written on her face. Did he really just climb in the bathtub with his shoes on? And is this supposed to be romantic? All right. So we're jumping back. So Clark's investigating Bruce. Bruce is investigating Superman. Here's the thing. And this is the thing where I think this kind of broke her brain. And I don't know if this happened before the scene or whatnot, the shoe scene or whatnot. Maybe the shoe scene was after. I can't remember. But I'm not getting to that right now. Lex Luthor is manipulating both ends. He's manipulating both men through misinformation and steals kryptonite from the government. Okay. Now this is the one that broke it for me, because I'm gonna get into this thing. And where's that? Okay. So Batman is branding people in this movie. I don't know why. I don't know why Zack Snyder thought that this was going to be something that makes us see him as, I don't know what he was supposed to see. It made him look like a serial killer, because he branded people with the full knowledge that Bat brand meant that they were going to get mutilated or killed in prison. Very Batman-like. Getting people killed is very Batman-like. So he was running around weirdly branding people like a serial killer, like, and it wasn't like an off thing. Like he actually had effort. Like he had a little brand that he had, and a little torch that he heated up and stick it on you, so that they saw that you were branded by the bat, so that you could get hurt in prison. Really, 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 really weird. Okay. Um, and so the tone of the mismatch, there's a mismatched tone with the tub scene and all that other stuff. Batman brands criminals, branded or murdered in prison, and cleared. It doesn't make sense with this no kill policy. Anyway, Lex for some reason decides that he's gonna mix. It fuses Zod's body with his own blood to create Doomsday. He created this rampaging monster that was an unstoppable beast, and he had no plan for it at all. It's just for he is just for the funsies, just for the vibes. He created a world-ending apocalyptic threat for the vibes. Haha, got him. I don't know. They have the fight. Batman and Superman fight. For whatever reason, Batman decides he wants to kill Superman, which is out of character. But this Batman has killed multiple people in this movie. Like, it wasn't a passive thing. This Batman had butchered, like he was absolutely butchering people, gunning them down, causing horrific car accidents, or just shooting them, just having the miniguns on his car blast them into pieces. And so Batman, Superman brawl. Batman is going to stab Superman. Superman says Martha. I don't know why Superman said Martha. I think he was trying to say save Martha Kent, I guess. Maybe that's the way they're saying it, because he didn't want to save it instead of just saying save my mom. Batman realizes that his mom and Superman's mom have the same name. Apparently that means a thing for them. And then Wonder Woman comes in being awesome. She gets the theme music coming in. Really the highlight of the movie. And Superman sacrifices himself to kill Doomsday. Now, there's a couple of other things, like Flash just shows up out of nowhere randomly. Just, hey, what's up, in Flash? And I'm gone. Right? We're not getting into the Flash here. I have a whole thing about Ezra as the Flash, bro. Like that was probably one of the worst iterations of Flash I've ever seen. And it's not anything due to him. Or them. A lot of it had to do with, one, that wasn't Barry Allen Flash. That was Wally West Flash. I don't care if they call him Barry. That was Wally West Flash. Sorry. And two, my Flash don't run like that. That Flash runs like he's never run before. Like he is never walked. Like he is a chicken that you're teaching to run like a human being. We'll get into Justice League in its own thing. So they have the funeral. They set up for Justice League. They're setting up for hints of Superman's resurrection. The emotional payoff really was not deserved. If you read the Death of Superman, there was more of a build up to it. Now it seemed kind of random, but it didn't really resonate because we haven't had that connection with Superman as a character. The benefit that the Death of Superman comic book had is there's 50 years of us loving Superman as a character. Man of Steel didn't ingratiate us to Superman. We didn't really attach ourselves to Superman, and this movie sure as hell did not humanize him. And so the death felt like, oh, okay, well, damn, that happened. That sucks. And everybody's all weepy and sad. You don't really feel like you lost anything, but you never had the connection with Superman as a character from Jump Street. I think what happened was DC decided that they were going to try to build an entire, they wanted their own Avengers with Justice League, but they didn't give us any, like there was no standalone Batman movie before this. It was Batman versus Superman. We didn't get any Flash movie before this. I don't know if Wonder Woman, did we get a Wonder Woman movie before? I don't know if we got Wonder Woman or Aquaman before this. I don't feel like we did. I don't feel like we got Wonder Woman or Aquaman. So they tried to set this all up in one movie. Whereas when it comes to the Marvel ones, Hawkeye showed up in the Avengers movie, but we had seen Black Widow and Iron Man 2. Yeah, we've seen Black Widow and Iron Man 2. We have seen Thor in his own movies. We've seen Captain America in his own movies. We've seen the Hulk in his own movies, even though it was Eric Bana and Ed Norton as Hulk, but they continued treated like it was a continual thing, right? Um, we had seen Loki. Like we had seen these other characters. And so it wasn't everybody's in this movie and then all of a sudden we're going to make a movie out of it. So that being said, so I'm going to talk about how my wife checked out in this movie. The bat lift scene was the very first one. Um, he got raptured by the bats, and the symbolism didn't translate that well because it didn't really tell us that it was a hallucination. And my wife actually said, "What?" Like I heard her say, "What?" That was like the first little disconnect. The bathtub scene. When he climbed, and I already mentioned this, the bathtub scene, when he climbed into that bathtub fully clothed, my wife was horrified, like we were watching a Saw movie. She was horrified by that, repulsed, jarred. Like she's like, shoes and everything. Like he has shoes on. He has shoes getting into the bathtub. It did more damage than I can give it credit for, but it was so jarring for her. Like I could see like sure just kind of pulling back and withdrawing from the movie. Okay. And the weird color tone in that movie made it kind of look like some kind of detergent commercial. It was really weird. Okay. And energy kind of started shifting and she started slowly checking out. And this is the thing that kind of broke her brain. So we're watching it, and I don't know the mechanism by which this happens, but one of the characters refers to Jesse Eisenberg. I think that was him, as Lex. And so she looks at me, she says, "That's not the Riddler or the Joker? I thought it was the Riddler or the Joker." I said, "No, that's Lex." She was gone after that. That was it. It was dunsies after that. I could feel her basically the fuck it just come like fuck it. I'm done. I cannot do this anymore. I refuse. I refuse because she thought that she was watching a Batman like Joker or Riddler on there, and really this is Lex Luthor. And she's like, nope. Because she's like me. She grew up on the Justice League cartoons and whatnot with Lex Luthor sounding like a brother, and he was smooth and not like jokey, like tee hee hee kind of dude. And this was not him. It did not read Joker. Did not read Lex Luthor. And so that was it. Like she officially just said fuck it and checked out. The twitchy Lex just didn't work. And I could get it because I could see him playing the Riddler. I thought he would be a better Riddler than Lex Luthor. The tech bro Lex just didn't feel right. It was like they've decided we're going to do a Mark Zuckerberg here. And I don't want to, like, Lex Luthor ain't a Mark Zuckerberg. I'm sorry. So now I'm on this journey into madness by myself, watching Batman brutally murder people and brand people like he should be in some kind of Saw movie, with a hot iron, like he's branding people with a hot iron. Batman is the judge, jury, and executioner because branding meant death in prison. It's like he's a whole serial killer. Like he moves like a serial killer. And I know that adds to the intimidation level. But at least have the stones to do it like Absolute Batman, where Absolute Batman does have a technical no killing rule, but he doesn't have a no maiming rule. And so he'll leave you wishing you were dead. And I like Batfleck. I like Ben Affleck as Batman. I thought the physicality of that Batman and Batman versus Superman was probably one of the best displays of it, especially after watching the fights in the Christian Bale Batman movies. They were all pretty underwhelming. Sorry. The physicality was really welcomed as the Batman Superman, the Ben Affleck Batman. I like the physicality of those scenes. It was just everything else. I even like Ben Affleck as Batman, as he nailed the brooding, grim badass. The only thing that was the big disconnect was this hyper violent Batman. It made sense if they would have phrased it as he's still young, but he was an old grizzled Batman. Jason Todd had apparently already been killed. And so I get it, but I don't though. And so I could see where they're going with it, where they're like, he's a more jaded Batman. I can rock with it. I did like Jeremy Irons as Alfred. I could rock with it. But then also his brutality in that movie where he's just willy-nilly killing people, that felt like young Batman stuff. And I feel like a turning point that happens, and then the story a turning point happens where you put in a turning point where he accidentally kills the wrong person. And then that starts the whole no killing rule. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know. But he tossed that no killing rule out the window, bro. Like he was getting Call of Duty streaks. Like he should have been able to call in an airstrike. Okay. Um, and then the logic just kind of fell apart towards the end. It just fell apart towards the end. Like the entire Doomsday, the mechanism they brought Doomsday in. Lex brought in Doomsday with no kind of controls and no plan and nothing, and just letting him rampage to the city and killing all these people. That is not a very Lex thing to do. If it was he's coming in as the savior, I could get it, and I think he may have. I got to double check. Let me double check the plot because maybe that I missed. Maybe that's a piece I'm missing. I haven't seen this in a while. But is there a scene where he comes in as the savior? Otherwise, it did like thematically it didn't make sense. And now, like I said, we're over 2 hours into this journey into madness. Again, it didn't make any sense. And like I said, Lex didn't have any plan to stop Doomsday from killing the planet. That's not Lex Luthor-ish. Now, I've seen it where Lex Luthor creates a monster and he has no means of controlling it. It gets out of his control and it happens that way. But to release something without a plan is not Lex Luthor-ish. Sorry, that's the character I grew up with. And so I'm sitting here, like I said, kind of going through my grief processing, and this movie's just spiraling into nonsense. And it was a good distraction because I like schlocky movies. And it was kind of a reprieve from how bad I felt. And watching my wife kind of go through it was watching her experience this movie, watching her experience this bad movie. It was fun because she made it engaging because she was physically embodying the things that were going on in my mind, like the bathtub scene and all this other stuff. Okay. And I realized that I wasn't watching this hero lose control. I was watching the director who had no guardrails and fully gave into his grim lord stuff, his edgelord stuff. He was really in his edgelord bag, bro. Like he was deep into it. And he was having a great time. Like I don't doubt that I don't doubt that this was his vision. I do think that he probably dealt with a good level of executive meddling for Warner Brothers after this movie dropped. I know that was a theme for Justice League. And then they brought in Joss Whedon, and Joss Whedon did his asshole-ish thing, and then the entire racism that the actor playing Cyborg dealt with. Like there's a lot of bullshit that went on behind the scenes of Justice League. But BVS kind of led into that. It was supposed to be, I think it was supposed to be kind of Zack Snyder's magnum opus in this trilogy, if you will. Okay. And so at the end of the movie, credits are going. I'm actually gotten the chance to kind of step outside of the grief for a while because that's literally what it was. And my reflection of watching the movie is, wow, I just watched Batman commit a dozen war crimes. Weirdest shit I've ever seen. Anyway, we'll be back next time. I'm about to wrap this thing up. And so tonight was really talking about some parenting stuff with accountability and change. I'll probably be taking a deeper dive. I'm going to be having a return of the character issues. I need to land on what character I want to talk about. I keep saying it. I'm probably going to be popping on to TikTok at some point here and doing some live streaming some games and recapping the show on another night. I'm thinking possibly Thursday or Friday, depending on what we got going on. But that's what I got coming up. Stay tuned for the launch of the community. Just a place for us to all hang out. Um, and you know, be kind to yourself. The world is going crazy right now. There's a lot of bad news out there, a lot of things that are going to absolutely test the limits of your attention and your faith in things. And so, um, I encourage you to be kind to yourself. Turn off the news every once in a while. Understand that a lot of this stuff is outside of your control, and protect your peace. Um, and just protect yourself the best way you can. That's all I got. I do appreciate y'all checking in. I will talk to you guys next week. Peace.